Hello again. So in this short lesson, we are just going to get a really brief rundown of these 4 theoretical perspectives that are on the board behind me. And then the following lectures are going to go more in depth into the ones that you need to use for Project 1 so you can ace Project 1. Okay, so there are 4 theoretical perspectives. You will read about them. They will be introduced to you in Chapter 1, which is the reading assignment right now, and then they'll be reinforced with each of the reading assignments moving forward, because in every chapter from here on out, there's going to be a section where they apply, the author applies these different perspectives to the different situations that we are examining in the textbook. It is important to know that you can take any data set, any set of circumstances that a sociologist is studying, and you can apply any of these theories to those data sets. So this is what I was talking about in the previous lesson, where I said we are supposed to use a particular point of view to formulate questions about data sets or formulate our research study to begin with. And then certainly when we're interpreting the data that has been collected and compiled from our research method, certainly we formulate our conclusions based on these different points of view. So remember, a perspective is a point of view, and a theory is a set of logical explanations, organizing principles that make sense. So they're commonly accepted as explanations for certain things. Okay, so there's 4 major ones in sociology. Functionalism is the first one. I put them in order of the way they are presented to you in the textbook, and this is chronological order. So functionalism and conflict theory, the oldest and the next oldest. Functionalism is the oldest by a little bit, older than conflict theory. It's a general idea. This is a macro scale theory, so it only looks at macro scale stuff and doesn't pay too much attention to micro scale life experiences. It looks at society as an organism. I'll get into this really more in depth in the explanation video that follows, but functionalists look at society as a machine that has functioning parts together, or a good metaphor or simile, I think it's a simile, life or society is like the human body or any kind of organism that has a whole bunch of different parts that work together to make the whole thing stable. And so a functionalist looks at society as something that is stable, it's orderly on the macro scale, all of the different structures that go with it. We will talk about things called social institutions when you watch that video that's more in depth about functionalism. Social institutions, you can say, are like the organs in the body. You have heart, lungs, intestines, etc. There are lots of different social institutions, like the family, the government, the education system, the economy, etc. All of these different big, huge parts at the macro scale are connected to each other. You're in college right now to get a better job, to make more money, to maybe have a family. All of these kinds of things are entwined in our norms. And functionalists say that they are that way because they logically work that way. And even though it's not perfect, social change does happen. Gradually, social change works toward harmony in society. And so we're constantly working toward equilibrium, a functionalist would say, when we morph and tweak those social institutions so that everything stays stable and orderly over the decades and the centuries. And it just kind of like a body, you're born and you grow up. That's kind of what the functionalist says is happening with society. Slow change to maintain order and stability. But those macro scale parts work together to guide all the trends and all the things that happen in society over time. Okay, so it's macro scale. Conflict theory is also macro scale, okay? Conflict theory looks at the structure of society too. Conflict theory looks at social institution also. So from the family to the economy to the education system to government, etc., all those things that I rattled off a minute ago, a conflict theorist looks at those too, but they have a particular point of view that starts out by saying everything that is at the macro scale working together has inequality built into the core. Inequality, unequality built into the core of the social structure. And so when it filters down to the people who live in that society, you have big differences between people who have rights and privileges, access to money, jobs, education. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of inequalities that are part of society by design, a conflict theory would say. So when a conflict theorist is evaluating data or evaluating parts of society, they're always looking for that core source of inequality that affects differing groups in different ways in society on the macro scale. So it's not going to be, a conflict theorist is not going to be interested necessarily in your particular life experience and how you are personally oppressed and downtrodden. But if you are part of a marginalized group or an oppressed, historically oppressed group, they would look at how society in general is shaped so that the outcome for people in that group is oppression, is downtroddenness, or any of those kinds of things. And so functionalism and conflict theory both are macro scale theories. They have a very different approach though. Functionalism is like, yeah, society needs to work the way it works and, for things to be stable over time, and this is what we've got. And so it's working toward equilibrium. It's not perfect, and we fix it over time. A conflict theorist says, no, it's full of inequality, and essentially we need to get rid of that inequality and change it fast. Fast and furious, honey. Let's not keep any inequality in there that we don't have to. And we're not going to wait just for time to fix things like a conflict theorist, functionalist would say. Okay? And then symbolic interactionism is micro scale. So this one, and please make note of what I'm about to tell you, because I hope I emphasize it enough in the little video that you're going to watch after this. But symbolic interactionism is a micro scale theory where people who use this theory look at the you and me level, the social interaction level, and the give and take that people have with each other, and they interpret the symbolism, they see the word symbol, they interpret symbolism that we have, they interpret the kind of interaction that we have for how it reflects the overarching patterns in society above us. Essentially, a symbolic interactionist would say that this micro-scale life experience that you and I have on a daily basis, from the ground up, it builds our society. So this is like a bottom-up kind of theory. Let's look to see how people interact with each other, and because people interact with each other that way, that's why when you look at, zoom out and see society as a whole, well, that's why the patterns in society are the way the patterns in society are. So this is a more complicated theory to use because you first have to understand these two really, really well to be able to fully apply this. Because what are the patterns? Maybe you want to look at gender roles in a household. Well, society as a whole has social facts that govern gender roles, right? And we have a patriarchal system, and so over millennia, patriarchies have existed based on natural law, and natural law has inequality built into it. And so a functionalist would say, well, gender roles in society are because we need different kinds of jobs done and different kind of duties fulfilled. And a conflict theorist would say, well, then it oppresses people, because what if the people who are assigned this task by society don't want it and they want to do this instead? And so if you are a symbolic interactionist and you are observing how do people train their boys and girls differently in their upbringing, if at all, then that is a reflection of overarching norms in society. So I'm going to get more in depth into that when you have that video later on symbolic interactionism, but that's the general gist of each of those things. Now, postmodernism is the fourth one, and that's the one that we are not going to use when you do your evaluation and write about it in Project 1 that's coming up soon. So postmodernism is a valid theory, but it's way more complicated than all of these theories. Number one, you have to fully and deeply, like the back of your hand, understand this theory, and this theory, all three of these approaches really, really well before you can apply this one even partially well. Because postmodernism is a theory that essentially says all these other theories are obsolete, they don't do a thorough job of explaining anything. You can maybe use some of this, but you should use some of this too, and you should use some of this too. Oh yeah, and nowadays, these were all formulated like 60, 100 years ago. Excuse me, nowadays we have global communication systems. You can be in a multiplayer video game right now talking to people in South Korea and Germany, all over the world. We have global commerce systems where we rely on even our food sources from one society to the next have to be shipped across oceans just to get to the shelves in Walmart in Podunk, Arkansas, wherever we live. And we have all kinds of ways of having credit and buying things that are outside of the realm of our personal finances. If I have a credit card or GMC financing, then instead of really buying a car, I'm really buying a car payment. Nobody buys a car to be a 30-year machine that we use anymore like people used to do. And so postmodernism says that these things neglect to include the modern day stuff like telecommunications and consumerism and the global economy that we all deal with today. And therefore, they fall short of explaining the whole picture. And so postmodernism doesn't give, one set way of explaining the whole picture. It is just an approach that says, do not use one of these things by itself because the world today is much more complicated than it was when these other three were established and started to be used. And so, excuse me, it's a wonderful theory to explore, and it's kind of fun because maybe you've heard of thinking outside the box before. Well, these different things are different boxes that have their own little set of interpretations that go with them. And so postmodernism of these four could kind of be classified as the one where you're thinking outside the box and you understand the contents of all these other boxes, and maybe you like some for this and some for that, and you're going to, use some in your interpretation. But postmodernism expands that and says, wait a minute, we are, a digital world. We are a world where now we have a space force and international space stations and communications with people all over the world that used to be really isolated because you couldn't get a literal phone line there. Now we have satellite phones and cell lines and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of changes that have existed or that have happened in society over time, and postmodernism says we really need to consider that. So please ask me questions if you have any. The next 3 lessons cover these 3 things. Take really, really, really good notes, not only for the quiz and for your reaction paper for this week, but Project 1 covers these theoretical perspectives. I ask you to pick one that you like the best and watch a movie and then describe to somebody how you would apply that to that movie plot or the movie themes. So anyway, I hope that you're going to have fun, but you got to pay attention to these videos. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.